The Jake Asman Show on the Sports Map Radio Network.
Presented by Rocket Mortgage.
Live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Jake Asman.
Knicks and Hawks tonight at Madison Square Garden. Game 2 of the best-of-7 series. Hawks took game 1. Trae Young with a huge shot to win the game for Atlanta. How do the Knicks respond? How do the Knicks take game 2? And what will the reaction be from the MSG crowd to Trae Young? For more of the New York Knicks, we go out to the Progressive guest line right now, and we bring on a host, anchor, and reporter with SNY in New York City. She is Marino, and she joins us now on the Progressive guest line. Maria, thanks so much for your time this morning. I hope all is well.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Jake.
So, big picture, obviously it's only one game, but how significant is it, Maria, that the Hawks were able to take game 1, and now, of course, it's not a must-win for the Knicks tonight, but it's a very, very important win. An important game, I should say, for the Knicks.
I think it's pretty significant that the Hawks took game 1. I think, obviously, home court is supposed to be an advantage for a reason. You've heard the old cliche that the series starts when the home team loses. And when that happens in game 1, all of a sudden, the Hawks don't look at Madison Square Garden as this scary, intimidating place anymore. They've already taken care of business in one game. So what do they really have to worry about? And I actually think the idea of home court kind of burned the Knicks a little bit in game 1. And that might come as a surprise to some people. But when you think about it, for a guy like Julius Randle, who's essentially the MVP of this year's team, the most improved player now in the NBA, he's never played in the playoffs before. So he has his debut in game 1. And on top of that, it's the most fans that have been at an indoor sporting event pretty much in over a year. The first time he's playing in front of that many fans with about 15,000 at Madison Square Garden. And then you throw in the fact that, the Knicks haven't played in the postseason in 7-8 years. They've been a largely unsuccessful franchise for the past 20 or so years. So there's a lot of pressure in that environment. The fans are obviously all riled up. They're eager, they've been waiting for this. They're salivating over this. They're very loud. And I think it got the Knicks a little bit shaken up to come out. I think they were really feeling that pressure of trying to deliver for their home court fans and Julius in particular. So now they really have to kind of put that aside and eliminate those distractions a little bit. I always think, as an athlete, sometimes it's kind of nice being on the road. Sometimes there's not as many distractions. So they have a tall task ahead now to kind of be comfortable playing in front of that crowd. And now there is, in a sense, a little bit more pressure because it's like, okay, I really do have to, we got to win game 2. Otherwise this series is going to get away. But at the same time, now they're hopefully a little bit more settled in.
Maria, how insane do you expect the crowd to be going after Trae Young tonight?
I hope that the crowd is actually a little more under control because I really think that Trae Young is the type of player that feeds off of that vitriol and it fuels him. Some players, it's the opposite where those chants will get in their head and distract them. But I don't think he's that type of guy. I think on the flip side, it actually, as I said, it fuels him. So I hope they're not, chanting F Trae Young or anything like that. I mean, I definitely think they should be loud. I definitely like when they're yelling defense, on the first possession or whatever, and cheering in a positive way. But I would not target Trae Young in particular. I would not let him get into that mode where he's trying to prove everybody wrong,
Maria, I mean, the Knicks fan. I don't think, myself included, I don't think we can help ourselves. I think it's going to be loud, and the Knicks, Trae Young thrives off of that. It could be a long night for the Knicks because they're going to be coming after him.
It could be another long night, but I really do think that Julius Randle in particular is going to feel a little bit more comfortable. I think he's going to know now exactly what he needs to do. It's not that he had a horrible game in game 1. It's just that he didn't shoot well. And I also think that he made some poor shot selections. I think toward the end of the game, especially, he was a little bit desperate. He was desperate to try to help his team and to try to be a hero. And I think maybe took some ill-advised shots. So I think for him now, it's more about just kind of doing what he does, but making good decisions, with the basketball, making the right calls. And then beyond that, the Knicks really need to dial in on defense, and they need to be aware of where Trae Young is at all times. And they had defense kind of be their bread and butter all season long. And if they're getting stops on D, that's going to fuel their offense as well. So I think they're going to go in with a much stronger game plan. And not only that, but just an understanding of how to execute it. But on the flip side, they got to be ready because Nate McMillan's also a fantastic coach. And I think he's going to be anticipating all of these adjustments. So it should be another good one.
Maria Marino from SNY with us here on the Jake Asman Show. She joins us on our progressive guest line talking Knicks Hawks game 2 tonight at MSG. As far as what the Knicks might do with the lineup tonight, Maria, do you think we finally see the end of Elfrid Payton in the starting lineup?
That's something I wouldn't be surprised at. Now, I didn't think that they were going to make a change heading into the playoffs because, even though somebody like Elfrid Payton hasn't, done a whole lot for them, everything was working for the Knicks going into the playoffs. They were winning games, and it just seemed like maybe a little bit of a risk to switch things up. Things were working well, but he went to Derrick Rose very quickly in that game 1, quicker than he normally does. And it was obviously because the Hawks jumped out to that early lead. So we obviously trust Derrick Rose. I still think he's going to come off the bench. I think it's just a matter of, do they want to switch things up, maybe have Frank Ntilikina in the starting lineup as well. But you never know with Tibbs. He's very, he's kind of set in his ways. And so I also wouldn't be surprised if he just left things as is and just said, this is the right plan. Let's not panic and change things up and execute better.
What I don't understand with the Elfrid Payton thing is if he's only going to play 8 minutes and that's it, and you're playing Derrick Rose 38 minutes, then if you don't want to start Rose because you think he's better off the bench, why not just use, as you mentioned, Ntilikina there and at least have Ntilikina out there for the first couple minutes of the game just to lock up Trae Young and hopefully, not allow Young to get off to a hot start?
I think you make a really good point, and that's, I think, the point that a lot of fans are noticing, that Derrick Rose obviously is that punch off the bench, but with the amount of minutes he played, it's almost as if you could put anyone in that starting lineup. And Frank being a quote unquote defensive specialist, it might give them, like you said, a little bit of a punch. It's a little bit of a risk though. Anytime you switch anything up, it's a little bit of a risk. And remember, this was only a 2-point loss, and this was a game that was very much within reach, and you had your MVP shoot poorly. So it's not like that decision was a make or break in game 1.
Maria Marino from SNY in New York City with us here talking Knicks Hawks. And now, Maria, how about the other team in New York, the Brooklyn Nets? They're now up 2-0 over the Celtics. I don't think anyone's surprised that they're up 2-0 in the series, but have you even been impressed with just how dominant the Nets have looked so far through the first 2 games of the series?
I have been impressed. It was something I expected, although I didn't expect quite so much of a blowout in game 2. But then again, I think the Nets were really trying to dial in and be sharper, because in game 1, they came out pretty slow, and it's understandable. They had a bit of a layoff. Obviously, the big 3 were playing together, I believe, only for the 9th time this season, and they had only played together once, late in the season. And so, you kind of expected the continuity to be a little bit jumbled. But they, did what they had to do. They took care of business and pulled away in the second half. But I think seeing how that transpired, they wanted to really come out strong in game 2 and just get off to a better start. And they did. They actually shot 52% in the first half, and then they ended up maintaining that throughout the entire game. So it was really a complete 180 from game 1. And what I was surprised about actually was how well they did defensively. I think they really locked in on defense, in addition to just completely shooting the lights out. But it helps when you have a guy like Joe Harris, who shoots, I believe, 47% from the field, which is absurd. But that's the beauty of this team. You have all of these offensive weapons that, Boston has to pay attention to, and there's no way you can really give equal attention to all of them. And so it's really a prime opportunity for somebody like Joe, who's a great shooter, to kind of lay in wait and pick his spots and just shoot the ball when he needs to and make good decisions. And that's exactly what he did. And so it was kind of, Durant had 26 and Harden had 20, but it was a relatively light lifting night for those guys because you have some of these other role players that are ready to go, and that's only going to help them and help those superstars save themselves a little bit, and not overexert.
Maria, is anything short of winning a title an absolute failure for the Nets?
I wouldn't say absolute failure. I mean, it certainly would be a disappointment with the amount of talent they have. And for me, I think this is a bit of a unique opportunity because when you look out west, I don't think the Lakers are not at full strength, actually. I mean, because no matter what, even if they get to the finals, LeBron James is not 100% healthy, and he won't be until he has time to rest after the season. So you have a bit of an opportunity to maybe get the Lakers at less than full strength. And then some of the other teams out west, like Phoenix, for example, or Utah, like for them to get to the finals, that would be a pretty massive jump from where they were a year ago. I know Utah made it into the playoffs last year, but they were a lower seed. They didn't get too deep into it, and Phoenix didn't even make the playoffs last year. So for one of them to take home like a title, I would be like, wow, like what a massive leap that would be. So there's that to consider. And then on the East side of things, I have been somewhat intrigued by Philadelphia. I've been saying all year that I feel like they're the team that could maybe challenge Brooklyn just because, they're well coached. They have their own big three, I believe, with Joel and Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris. And they have more playoff experience together, and they've been sort of on the brink of getting to a finals like more than once now. So I feel like the biggest threat to Brooklyn. However, if Brooklyn is prepared and they execute, it's going to be really, really hard to beat them. And, I think their chances of taking it all are definitely great. This is only their first year together. So I don't know if I would call it an absolute failure, but it would be a disappointment if they didn't win it.
Maria, as always, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. Been a fan of yours for a long time. You do a great job, of course, on SNY, and appreciate you making some time this morning. Should be a lot of fun tonight at the Garden, and I'm sure we'll catch up with you soon.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, Jake. I think I'm actually going to a bar establishment to watch the game this evening, so I'm looking forward to that.
Enjoy. It's going to be crazy at any bar you go to. So appreciate you joining us. Have fun tonight.
All right, take care. Thanks.
Maria Marino with us there. You can find her on Twitter at Maria C. Marino, Marino. You can watch her on SNY TV in New York. She joined us on our Progressive guest line, where drivers who save with Progressive save over $750 on average. We will take a quick break and wrap up our show here on a Wednesday. This is the Jake Asman Show here on Sports Map Radio.
The middle.
John McMullen, by the way,